All right, I think we are good now. So welcome to the Iowa AmeriCorps VISTA FY18 recruitment webinar. This is a webinar for our current sponsors who will be returning for 2018-2019 program year and starting to recruit for that. As I said, this session is being recorded and a PowerPoint will be available after the session. This webinar is designed to just do a highlight of the FY18 recruitment season, which is actually fast approaching. Actually, we are in it. The webinar is designed to highlight some of the recruitment changes that we have seen, that we'll be seeing for 2018, provide a forum for discussion. So the session is not intended to be all-encompassing as it relates to everything for VISTA recruitment. So please make sure you review any additional resources that we provide on the topic that include tutorials or instructions or other documents. So we're just going to hit a few highlights today. We have about an hour planned. As I said earlier, all of the lines are open, so just make sure that you're putting us on mute if you joined us via your phone. *6 will mute and unmute your lines if you don't have a mute button. And if you joined us via the computer today, there's a blue radial button that kind of looks like a microphone that will mute and unmute your lines. And Dave will be watching our chat or our conversation box today. So if you guys do have any questions throughout, feel free to chat any questions in there for us as well. So just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page as we get started. The agenda for today is really just an overview of Iowa VISTA, our VISTA recruitment resources that are available to you, the Iowa VISTA recruitment overview process of kind of how we do things. So nothing's really changed in that aspect. We'll talk about PSO Classic versus VMO. So VMO is virtual member orientation. That is a new thing that is rolling out this year. So you will see that PSO Blend is not on there, but VMO is. So wanted to make sure that we kind of go over that. In addition, we'll talk about recruitment timelines, some VAD resources, and then some screening tips and tools as time allows. So just wanted to make sure folks are aware of what we're going to be discussing today. For the 2018-2019 program year, whoops, my screen didn't advance, so sorry about that. Just a reminder, the lines are open, so if you guys can place us on mute, that will help with the background noise. So if you joined us via your phone today, *6 will mute and unmute your lines if you don't have a mute button. There's also a blue radial button at the bottom of your screen if you joined us via the webinar today. So just wanted to make sure that folks are aware of that. For 2018-2019 program year, Iowa currently supports 7 VISTA sponsors from the FY17 who will move forward in 2018. Those are listed on the screen there. Currently, we're in the process of developing 4 new sponsors for 2018. Approximately as of this particular second, we have about 50 VISTA members who are serving through these programs. Our FY18 budget allocation is still pending. As many of you know, the federal government is on a continuing resolution until March 23rd. And so as of right now, we still are on that continuing resolution, or CR, but we are hoping that that will come out our full budget will come out this week. So we just want to make sure that we are moving forward on that. So we are planning to roll forward as we have. You guys should have all gotten notices a little earlier this month about the VISTA recruitment and trying to get folks started and moving forward on that. So we just wanted to do a quick overview. Our 4 new additional sponsors will be joining us on April 5th for the program directors training. You should have all received a save the date for that event. It's happening here in Des Moines. Actually, Iowa Campus Compact is a willing host, and so they will be hosting us in their office building kind of at the old AIB campus here in Des Moines. And so we will be having a session on April 5th. I'm working on to finalize the agenda now, and that should come out later this week. So making sure everyone saw that, save the date for that. So an overview or a review for 2018, just a few things to make sure we're all on the same page on. Our living allowance currently is $12,311 for our year-long VISTA members who serve. This was last updated last July. So as you guys know who've been with us for a couple years, CNCS and VISTA look at the living allowance every year and make adjustments as they base that off of the poverty rate of the geographic area in which we're serving. So that's currently the living allowance. However, there has been some adjustments over the last couple years, so I don't know if one will come out this year or not, but more will come, I'm sure, July or after. Our education award did go up in October, and that is $5,920. So the education award is now $5,920. In addition, our end of service, or EOS, end of service stipend for year-long members did also increase. So that was a little different. We hadn't seen an increase in the end of service stipend for quite a while. So the end of service stipend is now $1,800. And so just making sure that folks are aware of that. Our VISTA leader stipend, end of service stipend, remains the same at $3,000. So some minor changes over the course of the time since we actually last had this webinar last year around this time. So just wanted to make sure that folks are aware of that. In the email that I sent out, there was the VISTA benefits, that one pager that I do every year, that should have all of this outlined for you. So if you guys have any questions about that, that should be available to you as well. In addition, relocation. So nothing has really changed with our relocation for 2018. Again, any member who is relocating over 50 miles for service, not just relocating because mom and dad are moving or boyfriend is moving, but they're actually relocating for service. They do get a travel allowance up to $1,000. It's based on a mileage rate from their home of residence to their service site. In addition to that, there is also a settling in allowance. That's a one-time $550 that typically comes on their first pay stub. So that relocation has remained the same, but just wanted to make sure that folks were aware of that. Social Security and citizenship verification is the same process that it has been. We are doing the e-verify process as we have in the past. Basically, if applicants do not e-certify through the process, we get a notification and we just basically have to manually certify. It's just additional steps. There's no huge red flags. Typically, if someone has changed their name recently, depending on if they're a foreign-born resident now, those kind of sometimes trigger in the system. Not always, but sometimes. But that is the process that is very similar as it has been in the previous years. In addition, health benefits. Currently, no changes to our health benefits. The AmeriCorps Health Care Allowance and the AmeriCorps Health Benefit Plan will remain the same as they have in the previous years. So as of right now, on March 20th, there are no changes to that in the future. So we just wanted to make sure that folks are aware of some of the benefits and some of the changes that you may or may not have been aware of based on when your members started last year. So making sure for that. Any questions about benefits before we move on? I know we're moving quickly, but before we move on to kind of some of our other policies. All right. If you do have any questions, remember Dave is manning that chat function or the conversation box, so feel free to type in there if you do have any questions as we roll through this. So a quick review for 2018, outside employment. So as many of you know, a couple years ago, we changed our rulings around if VISTA members could have outside employment. They currently can. Part-time employment is allowed. Another full-time job is not, but part-time employment is allowed. A few things to keep in mind is our VISTA members cannot work for their sponsor or their site. They can work for other entities in the community, but not for the sponsor or the site. And there are forms that must be completed and submitted. Those are found on the VISTA campus. If you actually go into the supervisor section, you will find a place for outside employment that you can go to. And it looks like Monique actually asked the question, where can we find the employment forms? And Dave just put a link there. So fantastic. This is why I love someone else helping me with these webinars. It's great. Teleservice, just a reminder. So teleservice is basically working from home. Teleservice is not something that everyone does or has availability to do. That is really based on your guidelines from your sponsoring organization and your service sites. Teleservice must be pre-approved by the state office, so we need to know if someone is working from home. And again, there are forms to be completed. The reason for this is because members are covered under federal workman's comp. If they are injured at home, they kind of fall under that if they're on official service. So we do have a form that needs to be completed. It's the same form I get to complete, similar to what I get to complete if I telework. So just wanted to make sure that folks are aware of that. Disclosed criminal history. So many of you know if you have an applicant who comes through who has a disclosed criminal history, we do have a disclosed criminal history form that they have to complete as part of their nomination process. CNCS and VISTA headquarters is becoming pretty strict on this year. Members will not be placed or approved until that disclosed criminal history form is processed and that is approved by headquarters. We have always Iowa has always set that standard. However, VISTA headquarters, sometimes we push it, and VISTA headquarters is pushing back, saying that we definitely need to have that stuff well in advance. So if you guys do know of any of your applicants who do have a disclosed criminal history, please let me know. The form we send you directly, and so you fill that out, and then we have to submit that forward and go through the process. So if anybody has questions about that. Fingerprinting. So fingerprinting for this year has not changed. For those of you who might be new to fingerprinting with us this year, it is no longer done at PSO. So fingerprinting is actually a member and site responsibility. We give you fingerprint cards. You submit them to CNCS and VISTA headquarters within 30 days of the start date. There is a $25 reimbursement that is paid back to the member on their first day of service, or not first day of service, I'm sorry, on their first paycheck. Basically, it's to cover costs to roll the prints, and so we provide the cards. We provide a little letter with that, and then we also give you guys a UPS mailing label. UPS is the brown truck guys, not the United States Postal Service. There's been some confusion about that in the past. So the fingerprinting checks do go through UPS, the brown truck guys. We overnight them back to headquarters. And then any cost that is incurred for the members going and getting their prints rolled, that $25 reimbursement should offset that. If it only costs $10 to get the prints rolled, members get paid, they still get a reimbursement of $25. It's just a flat rate. If it costs $40, they still only get $25. So it's just one of those flat rate things that they do. So that's just a quick overview of some of the things that we have questions about when people are starting their VISTA service, or things that just are nice to have a little refresher on for our year. So any questions about outside employment, teleservice, disclosed criminal history, or fingerprinting that anyone has at this juncture? All right. I am going to dive into VISTA recruitment resources. So VISTA Campus has all of our recruitment resources available to you, recruitment planning resources and on-demand tutorials. If you guys haven't checked these out in the past, or if you'd like a quick refresher, I encourage you to do that. The all recruitment resources consist of marketing resources, My AmeriCorps and eGrant support resources. The recruitment planning resources really talk about recruitment checklists, creating a recruitment plan, and some sample VISTA recruitment planning calendars. So if you guys haven't built or working on your planning or your recruitment calendar, I encourage you guys to check out those resources as well. Some of the on-demand tutorials that might be of interest to you are crafting a compelling service opportunity listing, writing fabulous VADs. There's a supervisor circle, which has a focus on recruitment that's out there. It's basically a session where they had a variety of guest speakers who came in and addressed some topics. There's also recruiting, attracting successful VISTAs. So basically practices for folks to find potential candidates that might be of attracting basically the right person for the right position. So those are some great on-demand tutorials that you guys can check out as you have time to. I encourage you to do that. VISTA recruitment overview. So basically the stages of VISTA recruitment. We're going to go through this quickly. This can be like a whole long hour session itself, but just a quick overview. VISTA recruitment is a multi-step process. It can be both a rewarding and a challenging process, as we all know, for those of you who have been doing this for a while. We encourage you to utilize this set of examples and basically create and customize a recruitment process that fits your structure and your policies. So this talks about a plan and then marketing and screening and interviewing and selecting. And so basically right now we want folks to start looking at their plan and their marketing. So this time of year is really when we are focused on planning and marketing for VISTA recruitment, spending some time determining kind of what skills are required, creating a recruitment task list, setting up tracking systems, identifying staff who will be assisting in helping spread the word or with the recruitment and the interview process, those types of things. And then also at marketing. So that's really advertising and publicizing our open positions, identifying different groups that we might want to market towards, and strategies to how we reach potential candidates. So we do encourage folks to kind of be looking at these phases at this point. We then will move into screening, interviewing, and selecting, and that's really going to be based upon when your designated PSOs are, so your pre-service orientation or your VMOs that you guys will be recruiting for. So screening is basically screening out candidates who will meet your needs, obviously interviewing, and then selecting the right person. So this is just the full cycle of VISTA recruitment. I'm sure you guys have seen it before. We've talked about it before in previous years, but just wanted to make sure that folks are aware that VISTA recruitment does take time. This is one thing that every year it always gets away from me, is how quickly recruitment season rolls upon us and how quickly we go through it. So take some time now to start looking at your recruitment plan, looking at how you're going to be setting up your recruitment plan, and really focusing on how you're going to get VISTA members into those positions that you guys have available. That's really going to be helpful in the long run. So we just want to make sure that folks are aware that now is the time. Now is the time to start. So I'm going to move into kind of our overview of our nomination process, but Dave, anything to add to kind of the VISTA recruitment cycle that you see there?
Jancy, I think you've captured a lot of it. The one thing I would share as a former grantee is, I think it was really helpful when we would organize our recruitment plans to really think about it as an ongoing cycle. Although you'll have a high point right now as you're gearing up for recruitment season, every time we do this gives us that opportunity to continue to inform planning for the next year or the next opportunity. So we really took advantage of that, really seeing it as kind of just an ongoing cycle throughout your whole year. The time and effort you put in now is going to help you with your upcoming service year and for your upcoming recruitment seasons down the road.
Awesome. Thank you. So as you guys know, in Iowa, we have a nomination process. So for each VISTA member who you guys have interviewed and selected and feel are a great fit for those positions that you have available, we do have a nomination process for that. We work within the eGrants portal, and then we also have some things that are due outside of the eGrants portal. And so again, none of this has changed. This is just an overview of the process. So outside of the eGrants portal, we have the Iowa VISTA nomination form, which is a form that we submit for everyone. It captures their name, where they're moving from, emergency contacts, if they're relocating, how you guys want to code them, if they're standard versus cost share, that type of stuff. We also have a what to know before beginning service. This is a form that our VISTA members actually walk through with you, or can walk through on their own, but it can be used as a tool to kind of go over VISTA as well, and they sign off on that. And so really this is something that we just want to make sure they understand what they're getting themselves into, and they understand what VISTA is, because it is a unique service opportunity, and we don't want them to be like, oh, I'm taking on a job, where this is actually a national service position. And so that just kind of helps them have a little bit better understanding of things to know before beginning service and before they get into all the trainings and we overwhelm them with all that fun stuff. In addition, we also ask for an on-site orientation and training, or an OSOT is what nationally we refer to it as. The on-site orientation and training basically is an overview that you guys do. So this isn't a form that we give you, though there are some examples out on the VISTA campus if you are looking for some. On-site orientation is really based on your organization and the sites that your members will be serving at. And it really kind of spells out the first month or so, first 3 to 4 weeks of VISTA service, making sure that there is an on-site orientation in plan. There's a plan for when the members hit the ground running. One of the biggest complaints that we hear from members is they weren't ready for us. That and we didn't know where to start. And so that's where the on-site orientation and training becomes a critical piece of, you're sitting down ahead of time and figuring out what they need to go through. So again, there are some examples and resources out on the campus if you guys are looking for a few things. In addition, the criminal history justification form, this is only if it's applicable to those candidates who have disclosed that they have a criminal history, and that is available on request. That's from our office. Within the eGrants portal, so in eGrants, we have the portal link. In there, there will be a completed member application, so that's what gets submitted to us. The 2 references, they do need to be completed. You do have the opportunity to override that if you have received a paper or like a letter, or if you have done a verbal conversation with folks, so you can override that. However, we do want you to complete that process. So when you do hit the override, it asks you to fill in some more information. So instead of saying, yeah, they were a good reference, we want to get more detail, because if you don't include it in there, then I'll ask for it. Or you can just submit a letter of reference with the nomination paperwork as well, if you feel that's prevalent. We also, within the eGrants portal, there is a sponsor evaluation. This evaluation tab is basically where you reject or extend the offer to the applicant. So this is what you fill out as the sponsor or where the host sites, depending on how you guys have your system set up. In addition, the VAD, or the VISTA assignment description, is attached to the applicant within the sponsor evaluation tab. So the VAD is something that we download, you guys download into the system prior to any nominations taking place, and that is then attached. In addition, citizenship and Social Security verification do go through the E-Verify process, and so that's done within the portal as well. Just a few key points that I want to point out for the nomination process in Iowa. We do want you to start your review and interview selections ahead of time. Obviously not the day that the nominations are due. That's not ideal. So at least 2 weeks in advance of the nomination deadline is what we would recommend, starting kind of those interviews and screening processes. Nomination deadline is always the close of business. So if it's, we have a nomination deadline of March 30th. It would be close of business on March 30th. It does take a minimum of 48 hours to have candidate citizenship and Social Security verified. So that process, we actually can't move a candidate forward until that is verified. So we do kind of need these things in advance. We set our nomination deadlines for a reason. So as folks have learned over the course of the years, we do set nomination deadlines in advance of the enrollment deadline. So for every PSO and VMO moving forward, there is an enrollment deadline that differs from our nominations deadlines. While there is some wiggle room, there's very little wiggle room. We do need to have time to kind of process things and run some background checks and things like that. So just making sure that folks are aware of that. All of our PSOs are on a first come, first served basis anymore. And so basically, if we don't hit our deadlines, our internal deadlines, and someone takes those slots, very rarely I can go to bat for us, but I've won a few times and I've lost a few times. So we leave it at that. But the PSOs, for the PSO Classics, we do have limited space at those. Few things for the references. As I said earlier, just make sure that we're leaving some detailed notes in there. For the VADs, make sure that those are entered prior to selection. And just a quick reminder for those of you who are working on your service opportunity postings, just because the posting status is approved, that does not mean that it is accepting applications. And so if you're looking at your service opportunity postings, the date of accepting applications until, that determines if the posting is live or not. So if you go into your eGrants portal and you see you have a service opportunity listing up and you're like, oh, it's approved, it's good. No, it's not. Only if the accepting application until deadline, that date that you put in there, if that is still in the future. If it is passed, then the service opportunity posting does come down. So just make sure that you, as you guys look at that, just want to make sure that folks, these are my little notes that I have from years of what we've struggled with over the years. So any questions about the nomination process here in Iowa? Again, we're going through these things quickly. I know this is just kind of an overview and a recap, but I want to keep us moving. So any questions?
Hey, Jancy, it's Dave here. I've got one more tip to share with everybody. Jancy walked through all those steps that once you guys complete the sponsor evaluation form, that comes to the next steps at our office to be processing things in the system and the citizenship and SSN verification start. But one heads up on that, before it actually comes to us on our end in the system, the candidates need to go in and accept that selection. And I think they get an automated message, but sometimes that gets caught up in their spam or their junk email. So a recommendation I commonly would encourage folks to do would be to, after you complete that part and select them, send a quick follow-up note or reach out to that candidate. They're familiar with you through the recruitment process, and just remind them to log into their account and accept that selection. That way that process doesn't get slowed down. That way it doesn't get kind of stuck in junk email.
Yes, thank you, Dave. That's a great point of reference. That is something that we sometimes struggle with, is our sponsors or our sites are like, oh, I selected them. But the candidate itself, though they have verbally confirmed, they haven't gone into the system, back into their My AmeriCorps account and accepted that position. So that is a key critical piece to making sure that it moves on to our work baskets here at the state office. And work baskets basically means that we can then process it and move it forward within the system. So thank you for pointing that out, Dave. That's a great insight. Any questions before we move into the PSO Classic versus VMO? All right, so VMO, Virtual Member Orientation. This is going to be new this year. This is something that's new for us. This is actually taking the PSO Blend place. So for those of you, last year we rolled out PSO Blend. So PSO Blend was basically a blend of orientation between on-site orientation and then some facilitator-led webinars and on-demand webinars. So kind of a blend of things that went on for their PSOs. So they didn't actually physically go to a PSO. They actually sat at their organization, their host site, and logged on to webinars and things like that. So VMO is actually taking the place of that. VMO is the virtual member orientation. It is not led by a facilitator. It is actually a self-directed onboarding and orientation process. So this is something that is going to be a little different in that it's going to be really self-directed through their onboarding and their orientation. The oath of service will be still administered on the first day, and there will be a Launching Your VISTA service webinar. So very similar to the PSO Blend last year, where they had the first day, they had a webinar for everyone to attend. They're going to do the same thing with the virtual member orientation as well, and that is where the oath of service will be administered at. An overview of the VMO can be found on our VISTA campus. If you go to the virtual member orientation link that is provided there, that will give you kind of all the information about the VMO that we have. Basically, the VMO consists of a number of steps and learning opportunities. Basically, it does pre-service coursework. It does the onboarding forms, which everybody has always done. It does a countdown to VISTA service webinar. So it's kind of a pre-PSO call that we do with folks. And then the Launching Your VISTA service webinar will be on the first day of service. The criminal history check, the fingerprinting, again, those are the pieces that you give them. Their on-site orientation and training is pieces that we build out. And then there's in-service coursework that is it's actually on the VISTA campus now, so you can see kind of what we'll ask them to walk through as their pre-service coursework and then as their in-service coursework. So basically, this model is going to be a little different from years past. So make sure that your candidates that you enroll in this are positioned to succeed in a virtual model. So basically, proficiency in English, have a strong connectivity to the internet, have the equipment, so laptop or a desktop at their service site on their first day, and basically they're at ease with the computer learning environment. There are pros and cons to this type of training. There's people who really thrive in it, and there's people who struggled with it, as we found with the PSO blend model, but just be aware of that. If for some reason you have someone who can't come to one of our PSO classics, they're not positioned to succeed in a virtual model, let us know and we can try to work with other regions to see if we can get them somewhere else in a PSO classic. But this is basically VMO, we believe will be kind of taking over as our main type of orientation. So this year we will have PSO Classic and the virtual member orientation. Both of those are available. Typically we try to fill the PSO Classics first. That's our main objective as a state office because we feel that's been a great learning experience. It gets folks to kind of interact with other people. But the VMO has always been an option, or the PSO blend was an option last year and the VMO is an option this year. Moving forward, so 2019 and beyond, we will see probably more VMO and less of the PSO Classic events. So just kind of forward thinking as we look at orientating our VISTA members in the future. That is not set in stone, but it's definitely been chatter that we've heard. So the PSO Classic versus VMO. So the Classic is where candidates actually attend a PSO event. It's typically outside of the state of Iowa. It's 4 days, which include travel days. There's approximately 200 VISTA members who attend for the region. And then the oath of service is administered on the last day of PSO. In years past, the members' then official start date was the day after they were sworn in. However, starting this year, member service term will officially start on the last day of PSO. So the day they are sworn in will be their first day of service, their paid day of service with VISTA. So I know that's a little different from previous years, but I wanted to make sure that folks were aware of that. For PSO Classic, or in-person PSO is what we're calling it now, so virtual member orientation and in-person PSO. There's more information, again, available on our VISTA campus. The nomination deadlines for the PSO Classic are set further back just because it takes more time to get travel arranged and to get people into a Classic event. So when you look at the deadlines for things and you're like, why is the Classic, 45 days in advance and the VMO is just a couple weeks? Well, there's a reason. There's a rhyme and reason for everything we do. But we wanted to make sure that we get everyone enrolled in time. And there are a few additional steps with the travel aspect. So that is why there are additional days within the nominations deadlines for the Classic event. So as I said, Classic is probably going to be phased out beyond this year. So we're still focused on the Classic or the PSO, the in-person PSO as we move forward. So any questions about PSO Classic versus VMO? All right, so we're going to go through some recruitment timelines. As you guys know, you should have received an email from IA@CNS or from me because I sent it wrong. But you'll be seeing more information come from our IA@cns.gov email address. That is our email address for the office that we're going to start sending more information out from when it comes to general information. So just be aware of that. So make sure if you're checking any of your spam or your junk mail that ia@cns.gov. Hopefully that you can somehow set that you'll be able to get that in your inbox. Each of you have been determined which PSOs we build a recruitment plan for, and so we have to turn it in advance of all of the PSOs even starting. And so that determination has been made. We've sent out that notice to you guys, I think on March 9th is when those emails came out to everyone, and basically designating which PSO classic events you are invited to recruit for. If you do have any questions, comments, concerns, things you want to switch around, definitely now looking at your recruitment plan, now is the time to talk to your designated program officer and ask those questions about how you can move some of those, shifting of when you guys are going to recruit for. As I said earlier, PSO Classic is typically who we focus our recruitment on. So June, July, and August are our big 3 months that we recruit for. The VMO will be available to folks as well, but just wanted to make sure that the classic events are really what we're shooting for. June, July, and August, as I said, those nomination deadlines are coming up. So nomination deadlines to the CSO, that's the Corporation State Office. I apologize for using an acronym that you might not be familiar with. So nomination deadline to the Corporation State Office. So for June, that's in May 7th. For July, that's June 18th. And for the August PSO Classic event, that is July 2nd. So you will see these are well in advance of the actual PSOs, but as I said, we built in time frame to help with getting travel arranged, getting things set up, making sure we have enough people to sustain the event, those types of things. So we will be traveling to Columbus, Ohio in June, Minneapolis, Minnesota in July, and Chicago, Illinois in August. So again, all of these dates and resources are subject to federal appropriations. As you guys all note, we are on a continuing resolution until March 23rd, so just be aware of that. With the invitation that I sent out on March 9th, I did give you guys some planning timelines to think about. So as you're recruiting for these events, just a few things to think about as you're building out your training calendar. So I'm going to take the example of July, because July is typically one of our biggest recruitment months. So basically when you're building out your recruitment plan, a lot of times you start in reverse. So the nomination deadline is June 18th. So if you want final decisions and collection of paperwork and all the nomination stuff, you'll want to make sure that that's being sent out in advance of that. And so we looked at June 11th. So really that's a week before. So if you look at your June calendar, June 18th is a Monday. June 11th is the previous Monday. And so that's really when your final decisions should be made, and you should start sending out and collecting paperwork for your nominees. Interviews and selection starts. Those should start happening around June 4th. That gives you a week to really do interviews and start making your selections. Applications due. So ideally, you'll start having applications come in by the end of May. You'll start to kind of screen, and then you'll get interviews set up by June 4th. And service opportunities, we're actually asking everyone to get their service opportunities posted by March 30th. So if you guys get them to the state office by the 27th, I think is what I recommended, that'll give us a few days to be able to review them, because it does take time for us to review them. And get them approved and be able to be live by March 30th. So that way we can have plenty of time for folks to recruit. One of the things that we are struggling with here at the state office is, does the service opportunity come before the VAD, or does the VAD come before the service opportunity? So in an ideal world, we would create the VADs first. You guys would have a strong indicator of what those VADs are going to be, and then you would build your service opportunities based on that. Unfortunately, March 30th is right around the corner, and we haven't had the time to really work on those VADs as well as Dave and I would have liked early in March. So we're kind of putting maybe the chicken before the egg here, in regards to getting those service opportunities out by March 30th. So we will be working with you on the service opportunities and the VADs as we move forward. VADs will be discussed in detail at the April 5th event, but we just wanted to make sure that folks are aware of kind of the recruitment timeline for the PSO Classic. In addition, for the VMO, so the VISTA member, not VISTA, virtual member orientation, sorry, V always stands for VISTA in my world. These, as you can see, there's typically a VMO every month. So July and August actually have 2 in the month because those are our biggest recruitment calendars or biggest recruitment times. The virtual member orientation is an option for placement in 2018. Again, nominations are first come, first served basis, and we want to make sure that the candidates who are enrolled in the VMO are positioned for success in a virtual model. So not everybody is really positioned for success in a virtual model, especially if you do not have a good computer literacy of how to operate online and do some of those things. So that's some of the struggles that folks have dealt with in the past. VMO again this year will be kind of individually led. It's not going to be people, we're not going to have facilitators and things like that. So as you can see from this, again, this notification was sent out in the timeline as well. That came out on March 9th. But these deadlines, we encourage you guys to put some ticklers on your calendars and really look at those. That is an option for you guys as well. So we just wanted to make sure that folks were aware of the timelines that are available to you for recruitment this year. So you'll see with the VMO, we do have a few additional options than we did last year with the PSO blend. So that's good, I think, as we move forward. Any questions about the PSO Classic timeline or the VMO timelines? So I just wanted to make sure that folks understood what those were, you had the resources, and if you had any questions, let me know. Any questions for anybody? Just to remember, you can still chat and put in the conversation box if you do have any questions, or *6 will mute and unmute your lines if you guys do need anything. So additional resources that might be of interest to folks. So many of us are working on our continuation applications or our renewal applications currently as well, because most of our memorandums of agreement end at the end of May. So currently right now we're also not only in the throes of recruitment, but also in the throes of our continuations and our renewal applications. So it's a busy time of year for us for VISTA. So sample VADs are available through the VISTA campus. There is also a blank VAD template out there. There's also a Creating Effective VADs tutorial. I encourage everyone, I'll repeat this, I encourage everyone to visit and view that Creating Effective VADs tutorial. I think that will really kind of help hopefully give you some baseline information about what the VADs need to include, the level of detail they need to include. For those of you who are returning, you should not be telling your program officer, well, we're still figuring it out in year 3. You shouldn't still be figuring things out. You should be building off of the VAD from last year. You should be providing enough specific detail that the VISTA volunteer understands what they should be doing and working on and by when those things are due. So just making sure that folks are aware that VADs should not be the exact same ones that they were last year. You should be building off of those, but at the same time, they are a living document. We understand that. So if things change, but they do need to have a level of detail in there so the volunteers are aware of what they need to be working on. As I said, we will be discussing the VADs more at the April 5th program directors meeting in Des Moines. So just a few things. You will need to update your VADs for each of your positions for 2018. So if you guys do have the same VAD for multiple positions, make sure that you're making those unique to those positions as well, but they can be similar. You will need to differentiate your VADs each year. So task in year 1, for example, creating systems and other startup tasks, might differ substantially from those in year 3, which would be training volunteers to carry on the project or winding down other tasks. So look at those VADs, make sure you're spending some times with those, because those are really what the members are going to be basing their service year off of. You're going to identify how the project will progress and demonstrate specific plans for achieving the project objectives. So VAD should be building off of previous years and ensuring sustainability. So any questions about those, please let us know. Let your designated program officer know. VAD is both a position description and a work plan. So it's used for recruitment purposes and for tracking VISTA performance. So the VADs are a pretty critical piece. They do lay the foundation for the entire VISTA experience. And so I don't want people just to kind of skim over the VADs. I feel like we haven't spent enough time on them in the past. And maybe not emphasize them enough. And so definitely moving forward, we're going to see how the VADs really we should be incorporating those into the work. So if you guys do have any questions about the VADs, please let us know. But for right now, any questions about the VISTA assignment descriptions? I guess I should explain what the VADs are. VISTA assignment descriptions. Okay. So screening tips and tools, just a few things for you guys to have at your resources or at your fingertips. VistaCampus.gov has screening resources, interviewing resources, and selection resources. So as I noted earlier in the presentation, there's some recruitment resources that are available on the campus to give you plans and sample things to be able to build out your recruitment plan with. These are some of the resources once you've gone through your plan, this is part of the screening and selecting and interviewing process. So that's kind of the differentiation between these resources. Basically, screening applicants begins from the point of first contact and continues during the interview process and is completed once you have checked the applicant's references and basically cleared them to either serve or not to serve. So screening an applicant really begins when you first contact that applicant. So these are some great resources for folks to go over. A few things to keep in mind as you're screening VISTA members. Applicants must meet a minimum standard of eligibility for us. Every member must be at least 18 years of age upon entering the VISTA training. There is no upper age limit, but they do have to be at least 18 years of age upon their first day of training. They do have to be a U.S. citizen or have a permanent resident status, and so there is a differentiation between those two for those of you who might not be familiar with that, but we do want to make sure that they do have they're a permanent lawful resident of the U.S. as well, or a U.S. citizen. They must not be listed on the National Sex Offender Registry database or have been convicted of sex-related crimes. So part of our screening process, once you nominate a candidate, is our office actually conducts the National Sex Offender Registry check for them. And so that is something that we do. If we do have any hits or we have any concerns, we will be reaching out to you once that check is completed. Our members do have to be willing to submit fingerprints for a criminal history background check. And be in a position to offer full-time service for 1 year without regard to regular working hours. While our members do work typically within the hours of the sponsoring organization, with some weekend and night work, there is flexibility for that. So we want to make sure that the members understand that it's not just an 8 to 4:30 job, but there might be some nights and weekends that they do have to do some events. So being aware of that as you're screening them. We do need to make sure that we are able to relate previous education, training, or military experience to demonstrate the relevant skills or interests necessary to perform the VISTA assignment. So basically making sure we have the right person for the right position, making sure they have the skill set or a way to develop the skill sets that we need to put them in those positions. And be willing to the maximum extent possible to live among the economic level of the low-income people that the VISTA project is serving. So VISTAs have to understand this is a full-time program. Their living allowance is non-negotiable, those little things. But we want to make sure that we are selecting the best qualified applicants. And we want to make sure that anyone who applies to our positions, we are in contact with quickly. So that's one of the things that we hear nationwide is that, oh, I applied, but I never heard back from them. And so there are people who apply who we never hear back from. That's a reoccurring theme that we've heard over the course of the years, is that people sometimes, you're like, oh, this is a great candidate. I've reached out to them 20 times and I have not gotten anything back from them. That's something that we're seeing more and more these days. So be mindful of that. But we also want to make sure that we are reaching out to candidates within a couple days of them applying, at least saying, hey, we've received your application. We'll be back to you. Something simple like that. In addition, Dave did post in the chat some additional recruitment resources on the campus. So this is actually from the nationalservice.gov. There is an outreach hub on nationalservice.gov. It's materials and customizable templates that might be of interest to folks. I believe, sent out a notice about this. There's like a recruitment toolkit that you could order. And so the Outreach Hub does have some additional resources and templates that kind of fine tune how we're talking about VISTA. Our new tagline this year is Go Where You're Needed. And so that's been the national tagline that they've developed with their recruitment and outreach. So those are definitely things to check out. Thank you, Dave. Anything you want to add to that?
I would just encourage folks, if you haven't had a chance to check it out, go take a look. It's a lot of the branding's being refreshed, so I think a lot of the stuff that the marketing teams put together at headquarters is very sharp looking. And I know we've been hearing the feedback. The national resources are great, but I want to put my own program name on it, my own program contact, things like that. And it's really great that there's some customizable templates up here. So please take advantage of those. If you're interested, it can save you some time.
Awesome. Thank you. A few additional things to consider as we wrap up the training today. So before nominating your VISTA candidates, we definitely want you to check references because we look at the references. So if there's a reference on there, make sure it's a good reference. In addition, feel free to call references. Feel free to call previous employment that are on that application. So check to make sure that they have the qualifications that you're looking for. Education, military service, those all come into play, as well as community service and volunteer activities. So those are key components of things to consider when you're looking at a VISTA candidate. The motivational statement and the readiness to serve are also key factors. So those are things we definitely want you guys to be thinking about as we look at why folks want to serve, why they want to be a VISTA member, what's motivating them to be there. Their readiness to serve is to gauge if the applicant is truly ready to serve as a VISTA for a year. I mean, this is a big commitment. It's low pay. There's a lot of things that go on with VISTA service, and so a lot of moving parts sometimes at our organizations, and we want to make sure that they are in a position to be able to do that. Sometimes it just might not be the right time in their life, and sometimes we have some great candidates, so we just want to make sure that folks are aware of that. And finally, we do have some upcoming trainings from VISTA headquarters. They try to do a monthly call. There's actually a call today. I think it actually was at the same time as this one, orientating your VISTA member, planning for your VISTA member's arrival. So those are always recorded. They're always at the VISTA campus, the supervisor webinars links. So we want you guys to make sure that you're checking those out. We try to send those out as we get those in, just as reminders to folks, but feel free to join those or listen to the webinars, I know, in all of your spare time that you all have. And just another reminder, we do have the VISTA in-person project director training on April 5th. So for those of you who've been around for a couple years, this is actually the first time we're doing this. We haven't really ever had an in-person project director training. Last year we tried to do monthly calls, and we've tried a few things in the past, and so this year we're actually going to try to bring everybody together. One of the things that we've heard from folks is that we'd love to see what other people are doing. What are other projects doing? How are other people doing this? And so we can really learn from the resources in the room. So April 5th, save the date. It's going to be in Des Moines, and Iowa Campus Compact will be hosting us. So yeah, Monique and Gio, thanks for the host, and Justin, I don't think Justin's on. We are going to really appreciate you guys kind of allowing us to use your facility. So more information will be coming out about that. It will be a day-long training, but we're going to actually, the beginning of the day is going to be for more of our new project directors, and then the second half of the day will be for our return or seasoned project directors. So you can join us for the full or half day, but we definitely want to make sure that everybody's there at least for the half day for those of you who are returning project directors for us. So please mark your calendars. I can't stress that one enough. And then for more information, we do have, obviously, I have a new coworker, very excited about, Dave, who has joined us. So if you do have questions, you can reach out to your designated program officer. We are currently transitioning, so some of you might be a little confused if Dave is your main point of contact yet or not. So we're still transitioning, but feel free to contact Dave or I or Vicky if you guys have any questions. Dave will be taking over fully for everybody here in the next couple weeks, I'm sure. And then VISTA Campus, and then our AmeriCorps website, the nationalservice.gov. So those are some great resources for you guys to check out. The Outreach Hub is a new resource we definitely want folks to check out. So any final questions? So I know this was a lot of information. We kind of covered a lot of aspects of VISTA recruitment, but I want to make sure that folks are comfortable with the PSOs that they're recruiting for. They feel they know what they're supposed to do next, and in developing their recruitment plan and their strategies, and they understand that we want service opportunity postings out by or up by the end of next week, which means we want to get those to the state office by I think I said the 27th or something like that. I can't remember the actual date in my head. I have it on my calendar. But be mindful of those things. So any questions, folks feel comfortable about recruitment for the 2018-2019 program year? Clear as mud to everyone? All right. If you do have any questions, again, feel free to reach out to your designated program officer. We will be, I'm sure, having a few more touch bases. Email is our major way of communicating with you guys. But we look forward to seeing you on April 5th. Until then, please let us know if you guys have anything that you want to discuss. I thank you all. And this concludes our VISTA recruitment webinar. Thank you so much.